Hi, my name is Kristen Rule, and I'll be walking you through Bank Your Future. Before we get started, please make sure that you have a copy of the instructor notes and student workbook on hand or open in a separate browser window. You can access these materials through the resource library or request a set from our office. Additionally, these materials will be sent to you when you actually sign up to deliver a set of lessons. If you haven't done so already, it's essential that you watch the Getting Started module before going into the classroom. It covers everything you need to know regarding the structure of the Money Sense program, the materials, how to administer the surveys and evaluations, and how to kick off the lessons with students. Additional information is also available in your instructor notes. Let's start by taking a quick look at the instructor notes. As you flip through the pages, you'll see that the left side has screenshots of all the slides, and the right side has all of the discussion notes and facilitation directions that pertain to the slides. There's also space for you to take notes and prep stories that you'd like to tell. The bottom of each page has a suggestion for a transition statement to help you move from one set of concepts to the next. Be sure to review each page of the instructor notes before you volunteer in the classroom. There's a lot of helpful information in there to assist you with delivering the lessons as smoothly as possible. Now let's walk through all the slides in the Prezi presentation. Bank Your Future is our foundational lesson. It's the one we usually start with in the classroom, and it discusses everything the students need to know about cash flow, income, budgeting, saving, and planning for their futures. We begin each lesson with pre-surveys. Instructions on how to administer the pre-survey are in the Getting Started module and in your instructor notes. If you don't receive pre-surveys in the packet of materials that you receive for your lessons, then you don't need to administer them and you can skip this section. We start the Bank Your Future lesson with a question that we ask the students: what does money mean to you? This is a great way to get the students talking and thinking about the concepts. After having a little bit of discussion, then you move into the What We'll Accomplish slide. These are our lesson objectives. You want to briefly go over these to make sure that the students understand what it is that they're going to accomplish by being a part of the lessons. The first thing we talk about in this lesson is budget. When you see slides like this where there's a question up at the top but nothing else on the slide, this is a trigger to you to make sure that you're asking the students this question. When you're going through your instructor notes, you're going to see a lot of places where we say ask, ask, ask. We really want to make sure that you're talking with the students and not just lecturing at them. So this is one example of that. So you'd ask the students what a budget is, get a few responses, and then reveal the answers. So then we do a quick review of all of the different components of a budget: income, savings, and spending, and we start our discussion with income. First, we have the students look at an earnings statement. And it shows it up here on the slide. This is also in the student workbook as well so that they can see it. Go through the slide and point out the important parts of an earnings statement, including taxes, Medicare, FICA, Social Security, all of that. And then we also want the students to understand the difference between their gross pay and their net pay. Have the students point out these different pieces: gross pay, deductions, and net pay, and discuss what they all mean. You're also going to have them fill this income equation into their workbook. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So here on this right side, you can see we've got the earnings statement so the students can review that and be able to see all the numbers. And then down at the bottom of this page, we ask them to fill in the key terms of the income equation. So that would be their gross pay, deductions, and net pay. They shouldn't be filling in the numbers, just the actual vocab terms. From there, we move on to the different ways that an employer can pay students: direct deposit, check, and payroll card. Discuss all of the options with the students and make sure that they understand that direct deposit is the best way to get paid. Next, we talk about expenses. The best way to understand how you're spending your money is, of course, to track your expenses. We have an example here in the slides, as well as in the student workbook. That is up here on this left side in this corner. We don't expect the students to go through and actually fill in their expenses or go through their week and what they've spent. This is just here as a visual aid and a reference in case the students want to use it in the future. Now to head back to the Prezi. So you can see first we bring up the expense tracking worksheet and it is blank. With another click, you can see how it's all filled in. So you want to use this to talk to the students about how they can use a tool like this and what kind of typical spending looks like. From there, we enter a discussion on needs versus wants. And you can ask the students, what they consider a need versus a want off of all of these different items on the slide. This usually gets a lot of discussion going. Then we have a video, and it's real easy. You just click on the video and it'll play automatically. If you decide that you don't want to play the video, that's perfectly fine. You can skip right over it. If it doesn't seem to be working correctly or it's buffering and taking up too much time, it's absolutely okay to just skip right past the video. The next budget component that we talk about is savings. And we ask them to think about what sort of things they're going to be saving for in the future. And at this point, we're really talking kind of big picture. So an emergency fund, short and long-term goals, and retirement. And this is here where we introduce the concept of pay yourself first. And that's really important to the students. And it's one of our main concepts. It's one of the things that we quiz them on in the survey. So we really need to make sure that they understand what it means to pay yourself first. This will likely be a new concept for many of the students, so you want to make sure to emphasize this. Next, we try to put all of these components of a budget together for the students. And we show them the anatomy of a budget. So here you can see at the top, there's the income section, expenses, and then savings. And when you click and advance the slide, you're going to see that the savings moves up to the top. So it goes income, savings, expenses. And also this pay yourself first graphic appears. So as you can see here, there's the symbol for the student workbook. So that means that we've got something to do over in the student workbook. So here you can see on page 3 of the student workbook, they've got the anatomy of a budget there as well, the second version where the savings is up top and that black arrow. And in this section, you would just want them to write in pay yourself first, because again, we're really emphasizing this concept. Next, we move into a more detailed discussion on income, and we try to get them to think about what their income might be as a young adult. So that discussion starts with the different paths you can choose after high school. Ask the students what all of their different options are, and then advance the slide and fill in any details as necessary. From there, we move into a discussion on starting salaries. So first thing, you'll ask the students to guess what they think some of these different salaries are, and then you'll reveal the amounts after they make some guesses. You can see here, we've got another student activity from that pencil with a 4. So let's take a look at that. So that is up on the top of page 4. The directions are to fill in the salaries for 2 or 3 of the paths that are most interesting to them. We do not want them filling in all of the numbers on that slide and putting them all into this table because that would take way too much time. So they should just pick 2 or 3. After that, we look at the cost to go to college because many of the students that you'll be working with will plan to go on to a 2 or 4 year college after high school. Similar to the slide before, you're going to have the students guess at the different costs of the colleges and then reveal the numbers. And you can see we've got tuition, room and board, total, and then average net price. That's the number that's really important. That's the average amount that a student will pay after grants and scholarships. So you can click through and show all of these different options. These are actually the real numbers for 4 different options in Milwaukee that are really common with our students. So you can talk to them about the difference in expenses and what might be a good fit for them if they choose to go on to college. And you can see up here in this corner, we've got another pencil with a 4. That means, again, we're heading back to the student workbook. And here, this table is in the middle of page 4. And what they'll be doing is filling in the cost for the option that they are most interested in if they're going to be heading off to college. So again, we're not going to ask them to fill in all of the numbers on that slide, just to pick the 1 or 2 that they think they're really interested in. Next, we talk a little bit about financial aid and scholarships and all of that. So you're going to ask the students if they know where the money to pay for college comes from. And then you'll reveal some of these options. And then with another click, you'll see that we draw more attention to financial aid and loans and the FAFSA application. Again, we've got this symbol with a 4 here, so let's look at the student workbook. And here you can see at the bottom of page 4, we have additional information on FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And that's just there for the students to have for their future review. You don't actually have to do anything with this information other than talk to them about it, but we want to make sure they have a good takeaway if they are planning to go to college. This is also the end of part 1 if you are delivering the lesson in 2 45-minute sections. If you get this far in the lesson and you're at your 45 minutes, everything's timed out perfectly, that's great. You will end here and then pick up the slides the next time you're in the classroom. If you get further than this or you don't quite make it to this point, that's okay too. You'll just pick up wherever you left off when you head back to the classroom for part 2. At this point, you'll also collect back the name tents and the student workbooks and ask the teacher to hold on to them until you're back in the classroom so you don't have to worry about the students bringing them back and forth. If you aren't doing a 2-part lesson, then you'll just move straight through to the next slide to continue the discussion. Part 2 of the lesson really focuses on getting them to think about their future and what life is going to be like after they get out of college or after they're a few years outside of high school. So first we talk about the cost of living. You're going to have them guess how much they think it costs to live on their own. After they've guessed, you'll reveal the average spending for one person, as well as how that equates to a salary. Then you'll have a bit of a discussion on what types of expenses the students think they're going to be having. So again, you ask them and then fill in anything that they may have missed. And then we transition into a discussion on savings. So here's where we want them to think a little bit more specifically about what they're going to be saving for as an adult. So they'll really get down to, is it a house? Is it vacations? Is it for a car? And then once you get some responses from them, you can pop up the graphics here. And from here we move into our main activity for this lesson, the big one, which is our budgeting activity. And you can see again, we've got this symbol up at the top with the pencil and the 5. So that is your trigger that you need to get those student workbooks out. So this activity goes over page 5 and 6. There are step-by-step instructions, and everything that they have in their workbook is also mirrored on the slides. So let's go back to the slides and take a look. So you'll step them through each section of this activity. So first, you're setting up a scenario for them that they are 22 years old, they got a job paying $36,000, their net pay is $2,300 a month. Step 2 is all around savings, and they'll set a couple of savings goals that will total a minimum of $150. There are some suggestions up above in case they aren't sure how much things cost or what they might want to save for. But they'll set those savings goals and total them down at the bottom here, monthly savings goal total. Step 3 is all about spending and expenses. So we've set up some categories for them. There's also in the center column the average spending for one person. As you can see though, that totals out to $2,600 and their net pay is $23,000. We want them to set a spending plan that fits the actual budget of the scenario. And then step 4 is balancing their budget. So they'll take their net pay, the total that they wanted to save towards their goals, as well as their spending total, and do the math to see if they have a surplus or a deficit. Now, there probably won't be enough time for them to go back and make adjustments to their spending plan or their savings goals if they do have a deficit, but this is really just to show them what the process is like and kind of get them to understand how you set a budget. And then you can wrap up this activity with a few of the discussion questions on the bottom. So then we summarize the budgeting concepts with this slide here that talks about the relationship between having a budget, living within your means, and achieving your financial goals. Here's where we're going to get a bit further into how to save and what the students should be thinking about if they're not able to meet their savings goals. So we have some tips here for how they can save more and spend less. We think having a part-time job is a great experience for students and can really help them save towards their goals. So we have a little illustration here of how much they could earn and save. And then we've got our very simple savings plan. And this table illustrates how much they can save if they're only putting away $1 a day, $10 a week, $100 a month, so they can see how that really adds up over 1 or 2 years. Now we take the conversation into compound interest. And so we have a couple different ways that we illustrate this to make sure the students understand. So first we have this visual representation with piles of money, and we start with principal, and you can see how the pile of the money grows when you've got your principal plus your interest. So then you can define these terms for the students because these are likely going to be new to them. And then we move in and you can see how we're bringing in compound interest. The pile of money has gotten bigger, and when you click again, it defines compound interest. We also have a table that illustrates an example where if you were to invest $1,000 and you don't add to it or touch it for 10 years, you can see how that money grows. So here, the table starts out with year 1, then we skip to year 3, year 5, and year 10, and they can see that really by doing nothing other than investing their money and letting it sit for 10 years, their $1,000 becomes $2,159. So next we introduce investments. We want the students to see that there's a difference between putting their money into a savings account or a CD, something like that, versus investing it. This graph will help you illustrate that concept. Then you can go a little bit deeper into comparing savings account versus investment accounts. We want to make sure that students are aware of the different options and which sort of savings goals are appropriate for savings accounts versus investments. We have another video here that goes over stocks versus bonds. If you can tell that the students are kind of really interested in this topic and they want to learn more, this is a great video to share. If you're running out of time or you feel like it's not quite connecting with the students, it's okay to skip it. So then we take a moment to pause with the students and have them really think about what they've learned about saving and investing. Ask them if they think that that's something that they'll do with their money in the future and why. We wrap up our Bank Your Future lesson with the example of Kelly versus John and the benefits of saving early. So you want to set up this scenario where Kelly started saving at age 22. She put $100 every month away for 10 years, which means that she saved $12,000. On the other hand, you have John, who started saving at age 35. He saves $100 every month for 30 years, and he saves a total of $36,000. And then we ask the students, who do you think is going to have more money at age 65 when they retire? And you can see from this graph that it's actually Kelly, and this is usually really surprising for the students. And the point that we really want to get across here is that compound interest works with time, and that's the biggest factor here. And we want the students to be thinking about how they can save money and plan for their futures starting at a really young age so that their money is really working for them. Each of our lessons ends with the Go Do It Now checklist. This is in the student workbook on page 7, as you can see from the icon up in the top. And as you click through, it zooms into the different sections. And so this is a great way for the students to think about how they're going to apply all of the concepts that they learned in this lesson and create a plan for what they want to do next. The last thing we do is administer the post surveys if there's enough time to complete them. You'll also collect the name tents for use in your next lesson and ask the educator to hold on to them until then. Students can take their workbooks home with them unless the educator wants to collect them to verify participation. We do encourage the students to hang on to these workbooks, to refer back to them, and to take them home to share with other people in their household. That's it for Bank Your Future, and next up we'll talk about Check It Out.